Florida right now, but we moved from Denver, and before we were in Denver, we were in Leadville, Colorado.
Okay, right on. And where in Jersey you guys from?
The shore, baby, Point Pleasant.
Hell yeah. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we are live and we're going belly to belly tonight with Jimi Letchford. A little bit of background about our guest before we get into it. Hope we got all this right for you, Jimmy. 1998 Region 7 champion, two-time Region 7 finalist for Cherokee High School. 1999, he led the Blair Academy to a 1999 national prep title. Wrestled collegiately for the Naval Academy with Bruce Barnett. Graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Economics. He is a captain in the United States Marine Corps, 2nd Battalion, 23rd Regiment. He worked for CrossFit Inc. for 11 years. He was the head of CrossFit International Business Development and Partnerships. And now he is the president of GORUCK. Jimmy, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the Airey Bros.
Thanks, Rich. You nailed it, bud. And Rich, Jimmy, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah,
Love my Jersey brethren.
we are excited to get into it with you, Jimmy. Probably the most important question we're going to ask you of the evening. You're a Jersey guy. Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Oh, I think I'm gonna go with pork roll.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
Nice.
great. I mean, you never know where that's coming from, It's like Gitanos or Pietros and like you got the whole cheesesteak war and everything as well. But glad I answered correct.
Yeah, we're pork roll guys. We fall below the bridge. Some of those Ivy League coaches that grew up in North Jersey, they like to support the Taylor Ham cause. But we actually had Coach Brian Snyder from Nebraska on. He went to Easton High School in PA, and he said it was always pork roll up in Easton. So I
Yeah.
guess it all depends on where you live and how you grow up. But we are pork roll through and through, and good majority of the guests that we have, they say pork roll. Like I said, with the exception of those Ivy League coaches,
That's
everyone's pretty much pork roll.
right.
Um, so,
Love it.
Jimmy, a little bit of through line for you. We like to connect with our guests. You probably don't remember, but you were doing a lot of stuff with the CrossFit Sports Series back in the
Yes.
day. And I was working with the guys at Life is Prescribed. I was doing some coaching as at CrossFit Counterculture as well. And we connected in the desert in Boulder City, Nevada for the
Yes.
motocross event. And I
Yeah.
can't remember, you may or may not have been there, but they also had the 5K at the Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Yeah, I was at all of them. That concept was like a brainchild of me and my wife. We hosted like just for fun, right? We hosted this paddleboard series in Newport Beach, which was like the it was the birth of this sports series, right? And it was like you get the CrossFit Games and it's all competitive and waves starting on time and everyone's weighing and measuring their food and training cycles and all that stuff. And we were like the anti that at the time. And it was like, let's just get some cold beer and some burgers and a grill and like let's do some fun stuff, like get out in the sun and do some fitness together. And I remember vividly that event. I got out on the microphone and I was like, "Hey guys, thanks for coming. You all have waves, but if you're expecting your wave to start exactly on time, you're probably in the wrong place." So, and then we started doing all these other cool things that we thought would be neat. So, yeah,
Yeah, so we
it's very
connected
close.
there and we connected over the New Jersey connection and talking about wrestling and stuff. And I can't remember if it was at one of those events or if it was at maybe at the games where I got to meet your parents as well too. And so we
Yeah,
connected as well. And so in addition to wrestling, I also ran cross country and track. I ran cross country and track at Monmouth University, but I'm also spent some time in the summers at cross country camp with Steve Shackley
yeah,
and Chris Callanan. So I know those guys at Cherokee, and then I went to Trenton State wrestling camp back in the day, and we ended up a bunch of people got in trouble, and there was a little guy, probably about my size, 5'4", an older gentleman, an ornery man that put us to the ringer. But he was actually, I believe, your head coach at Cherokee
Yeah,
High School.
Dave Chambers.
Yes.
I knew who you were talking about. I used to go, me and Dougie Eastlick. You remember Dougie?
Yep.
So Dougie was my best friend, and we were inseparable. And we used to go to the high school camp with the Cherokee high school kids when we were in middle school. And like growing up, because we just like we were wanting to get a little bit more challenged, I guess is the best way to put it. And so we had the opportunity to go with the Cherokee team as like little sixth graders. It was a great experience. And when it used to be called Trenton State,
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah. We're that
Fun
old.
game. That was the year John Smith came a couple of years.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
that was it. That's crazy. Um, so yeah, in researching for this, I didn't realize you also got to spend some time with Coach Buxton.
Yeah. What an amazing man and an amazing coach. Like the impact he's had on the sport of wrestling is something that I think it's understated. And the impact that he's had on individuals, again, understated. But the amount of champions that have gone through his wrestling room is like, I don't know, it's staggering. I don't have any stats on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he sent more champions to the podium than any other coach in all time. Like, again, just off the cuff, but I mean, every single wrestler on my team coming from Blair wrestled Division 1, and a number of them went All-American, and a few of them were national champions. So it was just what a fantastic experience it was going to Blair, and to just be around that kind of pedigree. It's fantastic, and I have some amazing friends from there too, like that I still keep in touch with. Zach Esposito, right off the bat, like him and I text all the time, and he's just like, here's a guy who lives and breathes wrestling, like it's through and through his blood, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, great experience there, great program. And now my friend Jay Antonelli is now the coach up there, or Brian Antonelli. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Jay is his brother. I'm on the board of directors. Brian Antonelli is the coach up there, former Navy wrestling guy, and he's carrying on the tradition.
Yeah, they like to say they don't they don't rebuild, they reload.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But part of that program too, Solomon Fleckman. Solomon Fleckman is an amazing man as well, and amazing coach. And him and I had like a really like, I guess, joking friendship, but we got on the mat and went at it, and he taught me a lot. And there's a guy who's like an animal on the Greco mat. Like, if you were going to go to the moon, it was going to be because Solomon Fleckman was putting his hips into you, and many of times that I was like, oh, that was a bad idea. Jim Frick too. Jim Frick, just like these are it's funny. I think about all my wrestling coaches and think about the impact they've had on not just me and then wrestling. Like, wrestling is a large part of my being and like my identity, because it's formed me in a lot of different ways. I've learned very, very hard lessons and very good lessons on and around the wrestling mat, and on the runs at 10:30 p.m. at night, right? Like, all circling wrestling. But I'll tell you that the coaches throughout from being a little 4-year-old, getting my butt kicked all the way through middle school, I remember every single one of them. I remember all the great things about them. And it's like, it's just so awesome. And it's funny, any podcast I do, we always end up talking about wrestling because I can't help it. It is it's just such a great sport with great people.
Jimmy, when you went to Blair, did you know you wanted to go to Naval Academy going in there? Because I know now a lot of kids go to Navy prep and they do a year there before they go to Naval Academy.
Yeah, I did. I tried to get into the Naval Academy year, like right out of high school. And I actually ended up in what's called the foundation program that the Naval, there's naps, and a lot of napsters are football players generally. The wrestling program has built up there. And so the wrestling program can feed kids through naps. But at the time, the opportunity through the foundation program to go to Blair was just it was awesome. So I didn't get a nomination to the Naval Academy. I got one to West Point. And I got into the academy academically and everything, but you need a nomination from a senator or a congressman. I didn't get one. And so they're like, here's what you can do. The wrestling coach then, Reg Wicks, the late Reg Wicks, he just passed this week. And if you don't know anything about Reggie Wicks, he's just what a coach, what a guy. And Iowa national champion, Iowa State national champion, by the way. But he was like, let's send him to Blair. And for all intents and purposes, it was probably the best redshirt year that any freshman wrestler could, get, right? Like we are wrestling Division I JV teams, you're wrestling JUCO kids that are just like animal hard-nosed dudes, or the second string Lehigh guys. And like you're a freshman and you're wrestling a second string Lehigh, guy. It's good competition. And so, Jimmy, I knew that I wanted to go to the academy. I was dead set on going to the academy. And when that opportunity presented itself, it was like, I'm down, I'm in. And I got to play football there too, which was really cool. We were national champions in football right before I got on the mat there.
Do you feel that prep year there really helped you jump levels as far as being ready for the college scene?
For sure. For sure. I mean, Buxton and Fleckman and Frick and all the other coaches there, I mean, they're so used to sending these guys to the elite level, right? And you don't realize this in high school because you got your standouts, right? And it's like you have your standouts in the district and the regions and the super regions and states, right? And you have your phenoms, and a lot of phenoms come from Jersey still. But like when you get to college, like everybody's phenomenal. Everyone. It's like the margins are so fine that it's like it it's a whole new thing, right? And you don't get that. I'm glad I got to experience a little bit of that at Blair prior to going to the Naval Academy, where the room was extremely competitive. You have kids that are state champs in college, or I mean, from California and everything, and just monsters. And it gave me a really good, um, yeah, experience, I guess.
Well, I am super envious when I was growing up. Team New Jersey camp was at Blair, and it was like Disney World to me. It was like, oh, this place is amazing. Wait, you get to live here and go to Blair. So I am super envious of you for that year. And before we get rocking and rolling too far away from the beginning of the show, last week we had Dave Miller on the podcast,
Yeah.
and I had just scheduled with you probably about 45 minutes prior to hopping on with him, and we were talking about how he found out about CrossFit, and he mentioned your parents came into where he was working, and they asked, "Hey, can we do CrossFit here?" He was like, "What's that?" And then he's like, "You guys know Jimmy?" And we're like, "Funny you should mention him." So another way to kind of make the world smaller.
Yeah, yeah, that Dave's a great guy, and he's been really successful too. That's a fit individual.
Yeah.
We grew up wrestling tots next to each other. In fact, his dad
Wrecking crew.
and my old man were really close growing up. And so when we'd see each other all the time. Same crew. The booths and the Wolverton and Ryan Wolverton, and like it was all the same crew. It's just like take the same tournament and put it in a different school on like Saturday and Sunday. And it was like the same kids every weekend.
So you bring your dad up, and you brought up on the Savan podcast that you didn't want to be your dad when you had kids and you started coaching, and the minute your son walked on the mat, you became your dad. Do you
Yeah.
still, I know your daughter's wrestled, do you still get that intense? Have you found the kind of middle ground there?
I am still looking for the middle ground. Still looking, and to be clear, like I have an enormous amount of respect for my dad, and it was more that like I was gonna be chill and I'm gonna be like, hey, come off the mat and just be like, hey, that was a tough one. We'll get him next time. Like, still trying to work that out. Still trying to work that out. Yeah, I'm in Utah. I live in Utah. Utahns are generally non-confrontational. And you don't find a lot of New Jersey type of people yelling from the side of the mat or in the stands, or it's like I helped coach at the local high school when my kids were going to this high school, and we'd get to these places and I'd be on the side of the mat, and the amount of warnings and the refs, they're just like not used to this stuff, and I'm like, you know I'm like, how can you both miss that? Like, it was locking their hands for like 3 seconds. Like, what is going on here? But yeah, I have not done that. I have not found it. But my daughter Corinne, she placed second in the state this year. And another great example. This is a great example. I almost got thrown out of states in the state finals because I have the video. I still have the video of this guy counting off 5 back points for my daughter, gives her nothing. And then or my coach goes over to the side of the mat, doesn't really push it very hard. She doesn't get any points. Well, apparently, like there were 2 counts. So two separate counts. So it wasn't full 5 count. And I'm going, well, it kind of doesn't matter if it was 2 seconds on the first, or 3 seconds on the back, or 3 seconds first, or 2 seconds, or a 4 second count and a 1 count. Like, she still gets points. Like, I'm like, what is going on? I'm losing my mind on the side of the mat because this was it. This was like her last tournament, and she got caught in the beginning, and she was on a run back or whatever. But like, I'm going nuts, and like the refs are like ready to throw me out because I'm like, how can you guys look at this? You could see it right here on the video. What is going on? I can't handle it, guys. I can't keep it bottled up. So my daughters go to Wasatch now. It's where the Sanderson brothers came from and everything. And the girls won the state tournament this year, which was fantastic. Great coaching, great atmosphere. Very successful both on the boys and the girls program, which is completely separate. I think 50 girls on the girls team or whatever. But like, it was the first year that my daughters went there, and we get to the first match, and I'm like, from the corner, just going, oh my, like just yelling from the corner of the stands. I actually apologized to the coach, and she's like, no, you actually like know what you're talking about. That's great.
Did
So,
did the kids understand that? Because they've grown up in California first and now Utah, right? They don't have any idea of New Jersey wrestling or the
no.
intensity of what that's like. Do they get where you're coming from, or are they like, Dad?
Yeah, I think so. My wife actually is like, she's from Jersey too, right?
Okay.
And so she's around Kingsway wrestling a bunch,
Okay.
familiar with wrestling.
Yeah.
I went to West Virginia, followed the wrestling team there, kind of thing. So like, she's a wrestling mom for sure. So like, she helps me, like, you guys just need to be prepared for this kind of thing. But kids are used to it. I mean, again, I just went instantly to Jersey.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah.
So you mentioned was it Rex was the coach at Navy when you got there, or suggested
Reg
Reggie?
Wicks.
Reggie, I'm sorry.
Reggie Wicks,
So,
yeah.
but you did wrap up with Bruce Barnett, yes?
Yeah, so Reggie at the end, I mean, he had coached for a long time
Yeah.
there. And Bruce Burnett came in my sophomore year. And for those of you who don't know, Bruce is a very accomplished coach, accomplished coach. And, anybody who's gone to the Olympics knows his name. And he brought in Joel Sharrett from University of Iowa, former 190 pounder, and a complete animal, like complete animal. And he got, that was one hell of a wrestling partner. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, Bruce came in our sophomore year, and Reg stayed around the academy for a little bit before retiring. But yeah, it was definitely a good thing for the program.
And so as an alumni, were you pretty stoked when they brought in Carrie Colott?
Yeah, very stoked. Like Joel was there for a while, and like the academy sports are really difficult for coaches, right? Because your pool for recruits is much smaller for a number of reasons. First, right off the bat, like not everyone wants to serve, right? And that's one of those things at the end of a service academy, like graduation, you owe 5 years. Like there's no question about it. They've since, I think, made some policies if someone goes to the pro levels for certain things, which is, 1 in every 10,000. But like everybody else goes to the fleet, or they go to the training and they go to serve. So like that's one of the first things. Second is that they have to be academically solid. You can't get a kid who's like subpar in academics into the academy because they won't survive. It's very difficult, very difficult. And so once you pass those two things, then you got to like actually have, a kid who's really capable to actually wrestle at the college level. So like there's a lot of layers, right? But, once you get there, then the academic load, the military load, all of that stuff weighs on any college, any athlete, right? And especially the wrestling team, because there is extra demand in the world. This in the sport. It's like, imagine, only being able to get 5 hours of sleep every night for an entire season, because that's a pretty regular thing, because you get back from wrestling practice and, oh, by the way, you're served the food that they're serving because it's military chow hall style. You eat that, which isn't necessarily, maybe it's not the best thing for you. You get back to your room at 8:30 and now you have 4 hours of homework, that you have to do. And then your point of place of duty next morning is at a formation at 5:30. And it's like, there's no skipping class. There's no taking naps. It is like, it's not what you're there to do. Right. So I say all that to say, like, for coaches, it's a really difficult thing. And one of the major things is beating Army, right? Like that's, no one's expecting, everyone's hoping, but no one is expecting Navy to ever win, a national football championship, or, Navy wrestling to beat Penn State out at, in the NCAA, wrestling championships. But, they are expecting to beat Army, and those programs have keep elevating, right? And so Joel did a fantastic job after Bruce, and Joel, they had a couple bad runs on Army, and Joel ended up moving on, and they brought Carrie Colott, and he's been fantastic. I'm on the Navy wrestling board of directors, and he's very engaged, just like Joel was. He's very engaged, and they've got great program, and they're building out the RTC program, like the Regional Training Center, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. But for the rest of the fans, like the Regional Training Center, these allow for other individuals to come in the room and wrestle with the kids, right? And regional training centers like help fund these coaches to do so. Right. And Hawkeye Wrestling Club is an RTC, and I'm sure Penn State, forget what they call it. I think Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, but like these powerhouse ones, like they raise an enormous amount of money, which helps pay for these studs to come into the room and wrestle with the students. And so, it's something that gets around legally, gets around the NCAA restrictions on certain things around recruiting and others. So Carrie's been building on that. We have been really focusing on like our brotherhood about amongst the Navy wrestling team. I say that because a lot of wrestling clubs, like kids graduate from Penn State and they go places, but they don't go too far, right? Like and they're still really involved with the program. Whereas with Navy, it's like, I mean, I graduated and a year later I'm in Iraq, and other guys are at pilot school and other guys are on ships like in different, you know what I mean? So these careers just go crazy different directions and we lose touch with each other. And what we've been focusing on is, rebuilding our alumni kind of team to help contribute back to the program. And it's working. I mean, besides just being able to reunite with some of the guys that you went to school with and you bled with and sweated with and all that stuff, it's great to hear some of the crazy careers that everyone's had as well. Like, where you been? Well, I was battalion commander and doing, it's like all this, but it's been fantastic for the Navy wrestling program.
Jimmy, we've had coach from Citadel on and coach from VMI on, and they both spoke about how those schools and those programs are about building leaders. Those you go to those schools, you become a leader. You were in a leadership position, CrossFit, President of GORUCK, captain in the Marines. Did you feel like after your time at the Naval Academy with that workload, kind of managing those crazy hours on a regular basis, that you were set up to be nothing but a leader?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you said it. And I agree with those coaches that is what they're doing. Like, it's great if you win a national championship and that helps. And it's obviously a fruit of the work that you've done. But, at the end of the day, they want to graduate commissioned officers to go out and lead, in our defense forces, right? And I certainly believe that the things that I learned at the academy, all good, and or the good things and the bad things, were definitely tools for the toolkit on leadership. And that's from, you work till the job's done. I mean, that's one of those things that it's not necessarily something that you might learn at a regular college, right? I mean, the job's over when it's done. We go home when it's done. That's something that, you learn. You learn prioritization, you learn hardship, you learn failure, you learn like, you might have an A in your economics class, but if you've got a D in your calculus class and you have 2 hours of homework each, like you probably should take, and you only have 2 hours, you should probably take those 2 hours and do your calculus homework, like, and you're just going to have to eat it on the other side, right? Like, you just really, just understanding yourself, understanding others. I mean, and the academies do a decent job at making you understand what it's like to be a follower in the beginning and a leader later, right? Because I do firmly believe that in order to be a great leader, you really need to know how to follow. You need to first understand what it's like to look up to somebody and to listen to them and see the good things they're doing and the bad things too, right? And for me, I just kind of always been like, oh, I like that. I put that in my quiver, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna leave that out of my quiver, right? And I've been around some really phenomenal people that end up being like, it turned out, end up being heroes. I mean, will go down forever as heroes. Doug Zembeck is a great example. Doug Zembeck, wrestler, Marine Force Recon guy, uh, named nickname Lion of Fallujah. He used to come in the room all the time at Navy, and he'd just be like, just come in. Like, first time I saw him, I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he just comes in, he's like, fully charged battery, just like, wow, here we go, let's go, big up the density or whatever. And like, I'm just like, okay. And then he'd come in again and he'd leave it all out there, right? And we're all cutting weight and stitches over our eyes and all this stuff. I'm like, whatever, man. But Doug ended up getting killed in action, but he's gone down in like as one of the greatest Marine warriors and leaders of this whole global war on terrorism. Look him up, Doug Zembeck, Lion of Fallujah. But like these are the kind of people you're around, right? And like, you hear all the sayings and the cliche kind of statements on iron sharpens iron and all that stuff, but it's true. It's certainly true. And, I think that I had a masterclass opportunity to be in the wrestling room with warriors that are intelligent and humble and guys that wanted to serve the country. And turns out that guys that may have gone in so that they could travel the world and do cool job and see how it goes, but the towers hit in 2001 and we were all, going into whatever year. And it turned out that like for the follow on 20 years, these are the people that were out like, defending freedom around the world. Right. And it's pretty special, pretty special. So quick answer to your question, Jimmy. Yes.
And I know CrossFit and GORUCK has a lot of military work in there, but there's people who aren't military. Coming from that structure and that mindset, hey, we're getting the job done till when it's done. Is there any issues or been problems with working with people that don't have that kind of mindset or don't have that kind of military background?
I don't think so because I'll speak for GoRuck, right? And because CrossFit was somewhat similar, but we were kind of a hodgepodge group of, individuals, came from all different backgrounds. Um, Being at GoRuck, we were founded by an Army Special Forces guy, Jason McCarthy, and it was him and a truck and some bags, and he drove around and put on like military type events to bring awareness to the company and everything. And he did that with friends, and they ended up being other special forces guys. But what we've built over at GoRuck is a great culture of people that we want to be around, right? And that's extremely important because inside of that culture, it's more of we work till the job's done. We're not punching a time clock. That's not really what we're about, right? And we don't bring people into that culture that like have that kind of mindset, and I'll say that like there are fantastic leaders at GoRuck that are not former military. They're not veterans and everything. And I think there's a good yin and the yang to it, right? Because some of us knuckle draggers are like, we're going to try to go through that brick wall behind Rich there, and like, it's just like, find a way or make one. We got smart people that are like, there's a door over here. Like, we just kind of just do that, So yeah, I mean, like I'm not, and I'm certainly not one of those guys. I think like I value what I've learned and continue to get to do in the reserves, in the Marine Corps. I value it. And it's the reason I do it is because I want to be around Marines and I want to continue to grow and I want to continue to learn and I want to be on the bench, if you will, right? As a reservist, it's like I'm not in the stands, but I'm kind of on the bench. I want to do that, but I want to do it because I feel like it helps me grow as a leader, right? And to continue to do and learn from other people on how I can, inspire others to do things that they really don't want to do. Because like we got these sayings in the Marine Corps, and it's kind of like everybody wants to be a grunt until it's time to be do grunt shit, and it's kind of like, makes sense because it's uncomfortable. You're cold, you're tired, you're hungry, you're wet, you're carrying heavy loads, you're just kind of like, I don't really want to go do this right now, but that's what the grunts do. And there are moments inside of those opportunities for leaders to come forward and be like, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is the reason why we're going to do it. And like to inspire the people to be like, let's get out of this warm sleeping bag, and go do the thing. And like that there's application to that, if you ask me, into what I do at GORUCK or what others do at GORUCK too.
Jimmy, I'm curious. I want to take a step back before we get more into the GORUCK stuff. But you mentioned coming through high school, you knew that you wanted to go to the Naval Academy. While you're doing that and knowing that you wanted to go to the Naval Academy, did you know that you wanted to go the Marines route, or is that something that came through being at the academy?
That came at the academy. I was dead set on being a Navy SEAL. And that's why I didn't go to West Point when I had the opportunity to go right out of high school. I wanted to go to the Naval Academy because that's where Navy SEAL, like I got three real good things. I got to wrestle, I got an academic, great like education. I got a job afterwards, and that job could be in being a SEAL officer. So like that's what I wanted to do. I had, some setbacks. I blew my shoulder out pretty hard my junior year. I was cutting a lot of weight to 174, and I was just getting sloppy on a practice. And I was wrestling Steve Cantrell. He was a major in the Marine Corps and good, tough guy. And he picked me up, set me down hard, and it was like on a slippery mat because we were sweating really hard. And my shoulder came out of my socket and went into my clavicle,
Oh.
splintered my clavicle and everything. And I kind of got bummed, really bummed, because it was at the time that they were really starting to do selections for the SEALs. It's just a process there. It's very competitive at the academy, very competitive. At the time, I think they took 16 SEAL officers out of a class of 1,100 or so. But anyway, like, I got down. I was feeling sorry for myself, honestly. Just really felt sorry for myself. I was like, all this time and all this, and it's kind of like, you know, I don't know. However, during that time, I really met some great Marines, really great Marines. And I was like, man, I never really gave it a look because I was just so dead set on all this other stuff. And I started being around other Marines on the yard. That's kind of the term for on the academy, the yard. And I was really impressed, and I was kind of like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And towers hit, and I was just like, wow, this is going to be a fast way to the front. And it was it all stars aligned, and I have zero regrets at all. Like I love being around Marines. They are a cut above. And it worked out perfectly.
And so coming out with a degree, you got to bypass Paris Island or Camp Pendleton.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So Paris Island, and the drill down San Diego MCRD, Marine Corps Recruit Station down there. Those are the boot camps for the enlisted guys. Academy guys and gals, they do bypass those, just because the amount of exposure that they have to the military way of life for 4 years. In the summer times, they do have to do what they're called cruises, summer cruises. They're not cruises. They are like 3 week kind of duties. They do two of those each summer. So 3.5 weeks of, you'll drive a ship. And as you go through the years, you'll elevate into like what would be from being a guy who's your first year mopping the decks and cleaning the toilets and cooking the food, to moving up a little bit higher to being like more of a senior enlisted person, right? Where you're hanging with some of the people that are bossing the moppers around, to moving up towards and more closely to the direction you'd like to go. And so you'd be 3 weeks at Leatherneck, for example, which is 3 weeks with the Marines, and you're out doing Marine stuff and painting your face and going out into the field and doing that kind of stuff. So it gives people some feeling on what they might want to service select and everything. But you get a lot of exposure to that, and it's not easy. So like, I think they've assumed that the boot camp thing has been taken care of because you've already gone through like what's called plebe summer, which is somewhat of a boot camp. But then you do have to, as a Marine, go to what's called the basic school. All Marine officers go to the basic school in Quantico. And that is 6 months of being a Marine officer. And, with the focus on every Marine is a rifleman and every Marine officer is essentially leading riflemen. And, the Marine Corps is very unique in that way that it is focused on that rifleman and maneuvering that rifleman onto a target. And everybody in the Marine Corps, everyone supports the rifleman, which is very unique because other services do not do that, like doctrinally. And when I mean doctrinally is like this is written black and white how things operate. And Army doesn't do it that way. Air Force doesn't do it that way. Navy's obviously they do things very differently because they drive ships. But like the Marine Corps is around that. So they'll go to the basic school. And from there is where you will receive your MOS, your Marine Occupational Specialty. And then from there, you probably have a little bit more schooling to go to, depending on what it is. Pilots go to fly, logistics officers go to Lago school, artillery officers to artillery school, and so on and so forth.
Okay. I was just curious. I know some people that have gone through boot camp at Paris Island, and they seem to turn their nose down to the guys that have gone to Pendleton. They say that Pendleton's like
Yeah.
Club Med compared to Paris Island.
Yeah, they call them Hollywood Marines.
One guy was like, "You know what it's like to stand in attention when you got mosquitoes flying in your eyes?"
Yeah. Sand fleas.
Yeah.
Jimmy, did CrossFit come into play when you were in the Marines?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did
Yeah.
Sorry,
What's that?
go ahead. Go ahead.
I found it in the Marine Corps, and one of my Marines, like I was always kind of training my guys, lots of ground fighting, boys. We did a lot of ground fighting. We did a lot of crazy kind of workouts like that. But one of my Marines, Lance Cantu, was like, "Hey, sir, you got to check out this CrossFit stuff." And I went onto the webpage and I was like, whoa, these are crazy. The video was like one dude like got up on the pull-up bar. He's like on this little jungle gym, like little kid jungle gym. It was all multicolor or whatever. And he like goes to his knees. So he was at a full hang. He does this pull-up and he goes right straight past the pull-up bar all the way above it. I was like, holy shit. So I went out back and I tried to do it and I couldn't get close to that. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, I'm gonna try and work some of these workouts. And they smoked me. And I was in love. I was in love. And so when I got to infantry training battalion, I basically was like, I identified like these kids were not getting the proper amount of physical training. And it was resulting in a lot of different things. One being obviously physical fitness scores, but you start looking at morale, you look at academics, you look at injuries, and when injuries happen, then you got guys rolling back. And that's not a good thing because Marine, like the whole infantry training battalion is to make Marines, not have them roll back and wait for another class. So like there were a host of different indicators that I'm like, okay, I got to fix this. And so I basically, I took the MOSs that these kids have, and knowing that the program of instruction was like, I'm like, okay, 0311s, which is your riflemen, they are going to range 215 alpha on these days. And then machine gunners are going to range 217. And rocketmen are going this way, and mortarmen are going this way. And the whole company is back together at the same time, like these days. And I put together a program of instruction at each one of those ranges. And it's like, when the kids are sitting on their butts, like have them do this. And because there is time between like these safety structure things that the younger Marines, they don't have anything to do. And I'm like, let's do this. And we did this for a couple cycles before I got a call from headquarters Marine Corps in my office. And they're like, what are you doing out there? And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, all your kid, like no more rollbacks, no more fights in the barracks, no more liberty incidences, injury rates are way down, PT scores are way up. And I was just like, I'm just making him do CrossFit. And one of the crazier things was that on the after course surveys, they were asking for more of it. And it was kind of like, okay, cool. Like, like we're on to something. And so it ended up blowing up in the Marine Corps, like going good. And they sent me to a seminar and they're like, write a report for headquarters Marine Corps. And I'm like, cool, no problem. When I went to the seminar, I met Greg Glassman, the founder, and I met a bunch of, who ended up being his executives there. And he's like, I really like you, kid. Let's keep in touch. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, whatever. I mean, CrossFit wasn't like a big business or anything, and it was just a fitness program to me, and one that I loved. And he ended up later calling me up, and he's like, I'd like for you to start working for me. And I'm kind of like, wow, okay, you know. And it's kind of history at this point. I mean, we went from we swelled to 15,000 gyms, and I think I can't remember at the time. This was early 2005, 2006 or something. I mean, we maybe had 100 gyms, 150 gyms, so it was quite a ride, quite a ride.
So you bring up using that with your crew and seeing the benefits and how that kind of got you down the CrossFit rabbit hole. And with CrossFit, we had Bill Grunler on and we were talking
Yeah.
wrestling, just like we were talking wrestling with you. And he said he thinks wrestling is the best strength and conditioning. I'm sorry, CrossFit is the best strength and conditioning for wrestling. Do you agree with that statement? And
One hundred percent.
do you have your kids do it for their wrestling?
Oh yeah. I just right on the other side of this wall is an enormous, it's a 3-car garage. It's all a garage gym, and my kids go out there pretty regularly. I just heard one go out there to go get their session on, and like it's absolutely. I mean, if I knew about CrossFit when I was a young buck, I would have been a monster, an absolute monster. Because it was just kind of like I ran. Like I ran all the time in my high school years, and that was something that like I wish I did a lot more as I got to be a bigger weight guy. I wrestled 184, and I didn't run as much as I should have, to tell you the truth. But I used to run a lot, but I never really put a lot of the stuff together. It was like wrestle, weight lift traditionally, right? Traditional weight lift, like curls and tricep push downs and dips and that kind of stuff. But like never were we ever like combining all of that stuff so that you got into like an anaerobic state where there were compound movements, right? And you did that when you were wrestling, especially when you had good wrestling partners like Dougie Eastlick or Chris Brisky or some of these older guys, right? But like if I were to able to take the time that I took with weights and put it towards CrossFit at the time, you'd be indestructible. I mean, you really would, because it's conditioning at the same time, strength training, and you're doing it in an anaerobic work state, which is pretty much all of wrestling except for the first 3 seconds of the match. But yeah, it's 100%. I highly recommend wrestling coaches or any strength and conditioning coaches to go to a level 1 CrossFit level 1 seminar, spend the money, or have your school fund it, but like you learn an enormous amount around fitness and exercise. Like CrossFit seems like a bunch of crazy people throwing weights over their head or swinging things or doing crazy stuff. But I'll tell you that what Greg Glassman had built and packaged in a very just a very digestible way, number one, but it's all backed by physics and kinematics and biomechanics and real science, like real science. And what they've done is they've packaged it in a way where someone goes, why have I been training these other ways all this time? And so coaches out there, if you want to have monster boys and monster gals, or you want to be a monster yourself, go to a CrossFit level 1, learn it, take notes, bring it back, package it for your kids. It will be, it'll pay back in spades, spades.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the reason why I got my level 1 is because I wanted to be a better coach. I wanted to get my runners stronger. I wanted to help the wrestlers get better. And CrossFit, the weekend level 1 seminar offered the most bang for your buck. I learned gymnastics. I got better at weightlifting. It introduced me to Olympic weightlifting, which led me down, a whole other rabbit hole, getting to work with Coach Bergner and some of the other coaches out in
Yeah, I love coach.
California. Um, we also had Coach R.C. LaHaye. He's the head wrestling coach at Lander University,
Okay.
and they finished second Division II this year. They had a national champ as well, and he said it took him some time, but he's a CrossFitter, and I think he said he completed his 5th Open this year, but took him some time to get through to bridge the gap with the strength and conditioning coach at Lander. But now Lander University is using CrossFit methodology as their strength and conditioning protocol.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, and even if, it's good to just have the knowledge. It's good to have the knowledge on how, you know, people can train that way, right? But there's other pieces that, I mean, I'll tell you, GORUCK right now, like I am adamant at this point about sand training. And I say that because, I love wrestling, as you know, I love jujitsu, and I love like training outside. And I'll tell you, like having some sandbags on the side of your mat or in a corner or whatever that looks like, they're first off very inexpensive. They're really hard, like it's hard to hurt yourself. Like you can drop a barbell or a dumbbell on your foot, right? You drop a sandbag on your foot, it's not going to hurt, right? But I'll tell you that like having those there and having a coach that understands how he can use those in between, like, if you got a 4-man group or, a lot of times it's a 3-man group, is like guy that's out is doing hang clean, cleans and squat cleans or thrusters or whatever it looks like. I mean, understanding recovery, understanding like how to move, understanding like what you're trying to get like out of the stimulus, like that is very beneficial, and you don't need an entire weight room to take the good things that you learn at a level 1 and implement them with a couple sandbags in your wrestling room, and a pull-up bar and a rope. It's like you can make monsters with that. A little bit of knowledge, a few sandbags, a pull-up bar and a rope, and he's like, just watch. Be breaking guys.
Yep.
Jimmy, time has flown by and we want to be super respectful. So I got one last one before we get into the final four if Rich doesn't have one. Mention GORUCK, mention the sandbags, have them on the side of your mat. Is there anything that the audience that we need to keep an eye out for coming from GORUCK? Any new gear, any new shoes, anything kind of you want to talk about?
Yeah, we make everyone knows us as the Rucking company because we are. And Rucking, mark my word, Rucking will be bigger than running. It will be bigger than running. And it's already kind of started and just getting started. But I'll tell you from a safety standpoint and, like mitigating injury, but also, aging population and things like that, like Rucking is becoming a lot more mainstream and it's outside of the military, right? Like now, like we do it in the military because we have to do it, but we train so that we can do it. And now GORUCK's brought that to the rest of the world and we're seeing the benefits of it. But because everyone sees us as the Rucking company, they don't know that we have great training shoes. Like our shoes are great. Our ballistic trainers, which are a great gym shoe, are really fantastic. Our shoe dog has 30 some years in the industry. He's the guy who built the Reebok Nano. He built the Reebok pump. If you guys remember that, the Reebok pump, that was his. He made that. And so he's our shoe guy. And he's an amazing dude. Boston boxer. He always, when I get to see him down at headquarters all the time, he's always busting my butt about being a wrestler and he's a boxer, but his face is all crooked and everything. So he couldn't have been a great boxer. But anyway, we make really good training shoes. So I highly recommend picking up a pair. If you don't like them, you can send it back. I really, ballistic trainers and our rough runners. Our rough runners are a fantastic cross training shoe. And so they are out. It's what we built our relationship around the CrossFit deal that we have with them. They are super keen on it. And it kind of came from their staff wearing it. And then we ended up in conversations and here we are. So we're really excited to be a part of that.
Yeah, I got two statements and then one more question for you, Jimmy. Talking about the shoes, I was out in the mountains a couple weeks ago training, and me and another guy were passing, and we just stopped and we're talking real quick, and he was asking about my shoes and how the tread was and everything, and I'm like, I've never really found a great tread on a shoe that really lasts long in the mountains. And he's like, I just heard about these GORUCK mountain shoes. He's like, that's the next shoe I'm gonna buy. So yeah, just a random trail runner out in the middle of nowhere in
That's
South
awesome.
Carolina was talking about your shoes. And then, like I mentioned in the beginning, Jimmy and I moved from Denver. We lived pretty close to a pretty popular park in the city. And we would go there and walk and stuff. And we would always see uh, soccer moms walking with their GORUCK
Yeah.
vests on. So it's like it's catching on. And you're right, it's becoming more and more popular, and more and more people are getting into it. I have other friends from New Jersey that text me and ask me what I think or what I know. I have some clients that I've recommended getting vests for their training for their ultra marathon. So it's definitely spreading, and it's fun to get out and just walk with a heavy load, and I think from
Yeah.
a ultra marathoning perspective, when you're running 100 miles, like no matter how good you think you are or how in shape you think you are, you're going to be hiking at some point during that race,
Yeah.
and you need to train that, so sometimes people don't realize it, but they're like, you really want me to walk this much today? I'm like, yes, if you're running 100 miles, you're going to be hiking some and you need to get good at it. So let's put some weight to it and get out there and just do it.
Yeah. We are seeing a lot of that from the ultra world. We are seeing it in a lot of their training protocol. They're what they're doing is they're coming off their miles and they're increasing volume and load through loading themselves through a ruck, right? And this is a part of a few like a gal that I met at this Jack Taylor showcase a couple months ago. She came up to me. She's like, I love you guys. I've been using your rucks for, she just finished like some 250-mile run. And like
Was
she's
it
telling me,
Cocodona?
what's that?
Was it the Cocodona 250 in Arizona?
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I like as soon as she says that, like I black out. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Like I don't even know what you like. You're psycho, am I? Yeah. But like she's just telling me like she uses our ruck to like to train, like rather than going out and trying to run 50 miles in a day, she'll run 10, 15 and load herself for another 15-mile ruck. And she's like, I'm getting the same kind of results from pounding my feet on the ground, you know, I mean, I don't know how many 15 mile, you're talking probably 25,000 times, so it's really cool.
Yeah. The last one we have, we mentioned Bill Grunler briefly before, and we know that there's quite a few wrestlers that navigate through the CrossFit space, especially the red shirts and those sorts of things. And Jimmy and I kicked ourselves when we had Bill on. We didn't ask, but we're curious. Back in the day when you guys were all meeting up doing your things, did you guys ever scrap a little bit? Any of the CrossFit wrestlers? Did you ever? You
We
know how
kind of goofed
wrestlers are when they
around.
get.
We kind of goofed around. Todd Widman is a wrestler. He's a huge wrestling advocate. Joe DeGane's a wrestler, wrestled up at Michigan. Um, and like there is a bunch of us, right? And like now it's kind of evolved into a lot more of the jujitsu thing,
Mhm.
right? So less of the pound the head and just driving off the mat kind of thing. Now it's like a little bit more, we're a little bit, it's a little bit more elegant violence, I guess. And so, yeah, we've done it. There was it's funny. I can say this because he's a friend of mine. But Dave Castro and I almost had like $1,000 bet. And the $1,000 bet was that I couldn't take him down in, I think it was a minute or 30 seconds. And, we couldn't come to terms on it. It was just goofing off, right? Just boys being boys, like talking smack on each other and everything. And we never ended up doing it. And I don't know if, for what reason, like it was probably just trash talk. But the idea was, you know, he could stay on his feet for a minute. And I said, you absolutely cannot stay on your feet with me for a minute. Like I mean, I am a thick guy or whatever, but I move way faster than I look. And I am pretty dangerous on my feet, right? And so I couldn't get him to agree that it needed to be within a certain area because I didn't want him to go, all right, ready, set, go, and then take off because he's fast. Actually, he doesn't look fast, but he's fast. So we got into it like that kind of thing, but no actually like fisticuffs for anybody that I remember.
Yeah, I figured there'd be some arm drags and maybe some foot sweeps or some little things like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Jimmy, first rapid fire question I got for you. Are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
How do you brew your coffee and how do you take it?
Um, I like a little splash of heavy cream in there, and it's just a drip. And we do espresso blend in this house.
You have a favorite roaster in Park City?
Park City Coffee Roasters espresso blend.
Okay. All right.
Now, I'll
Jimmy,
tell you though, I go down to CrossFit or GORUCK HQ, and my friend owns the Hotel Palms. If you're ever down in Jacksonville Beach, Hotel Palms is a cool little spot. And Show Pigeon Coffee is a little place in there, and it's like a little beacon for Jacksonville Beach, Atlantic Beach people. And this gal, Jamie, makes a wicked cup of coffee. Probably one of the best I've ever had. So good that I get double every time, and I get a second one. And by the time I'm in GORUCK HQ, I'm like shaking, but I can't resist it because it's the same response every single time. I'm like shaking and I feel really jittery, but I can't resist it because it's so yummy. Show Pigeon.
Show Pigeon. Jim, we might have to convene in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Either that or I'll get some beans on my way up to you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Jimmy, do you have any daily practices or rituals you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Jimi Letchford?
I've been doing push-ups a lot. I mean, there was a guy, Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker is just like growing up. He was just, I mean, you guys are Eagles fans, right?
No, we're from Giants territory, my
But
friend.
we're not football fans.
You made it right above the top, that line, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Herschel Walker, my dad would be like, hey, Herschel Walker does 300 push-ups a day. And so like I wake up and I do push-ups. And, it's like besides getting your blood flowing or whatever, it just feels like it makes me better, and yeah. And I like going out especially when it's nice, to just go out and shoot my bow pretty regularly. In fact, that's what I was working on before this thing started. I shot a fletchling off one of them when I was out there earlier today.
All right. So, Jimmy, small world story for you here. I moved down to South Carolina to take over a wrestling team down here, and I also got involved in coaching cross country and track and field. And one of the kind of retired but still track coaches, mainly with the pole vault, he was Herschel Walker's football and track and field coach in Georgia back in the day, and he's in the 30 for 30 very often. So I got to spend a track season with him, and he's quite a character. He's a fun guy to hang out with.
That's cool. Herschel was always like, he was just one of those guys that I always admired, right? And he's been popping his head out a bunch more recently too.
Yeah. Yes, he has.
Still looks fit as all can be.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
I listen to music a lot. I'm not like when I've got a lot of things going on, right? And it's really hard for me me to find moments where I can actually focus, right? And I find that like when I'm shooting my bow, I'm normally out there by myself and I'm just thinking about some of the things, trying to disconnect, right? So, I listen to country music when I'm in my Land Cruiser or working around the house or in the yard. I listen to Five Finger Death Punch when I'm training. And other than that, like I am mostly just trying to get some thoughts on, you know, processed in my mind. But I do love to read. I do love to read. I think Michael Easter's book, Comfort Crisis, is a really good one. I think everyone should give that a run. It's not because he does talk about rucking. That's kind of how I found it. But he just talks about, making yourself a little bit uncomfortable, and being okay with it. So I would highly recommend that it's a really good read.
What's your go-to country, Jimmy?
Right now, I'm super into man, it's a slew of different things. I'm really loving Luke Combs. I love the old stuff like, Hank and Willie and all that. I mean, I'm very all over the board with my country. My wife is obsessed with Hardy right now. And I don't know if you've heard Hardy. He's a newer guy, but he's got everything from, you know, traditional country to like hard rock songs. In fact, I heard a stat about him the other day that he's the only one that's gotten um, some sort of crazy award. I can't remember. It's like golden or was top charts on both a country song and a rock song at the same time. They're different songs. So check him out. But yeah,
All
yeah.
right. You get down with Charlie Crockett at all?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
right on.
I'm really digging Ryan Bingham right now too.
Okay.
Ryan Bingham's super cool. Yeah. And Cody Johnson, pretty amazing.
You get down with Morgan Wallen when you're with the kids?
Yeah. My daughters love Morgan Wallen.
Yeah.
Really, really love Morgan Wallen. We're country family out here.
Right. Was that something that you grew into, or did you have that growing up in South Jersey?
No, that's kind of funny because I've always listened to country. I've always listened to country and I've always loved it. In fact, my wife's nickname for me, she's called me cowboy from the day she's met me, because I got this like, it's kind of a joke in a way, but like I am somewhat of a cowboy and not in the sense of, that I'm moving cows around the pasture, right? But I love my country music. I love my cowboy boots. I love the country culture, I love it, love leather and tobacco kind of thing. But she's like, you're kind of a cowboy in a lot of other ways too. So, you know, it's like a compliment and a dig at the same time, I think.
Matt, I think it's all compliment.
Jersey's got a lot of, everyone sees the turnpike, but no one really sees, like, you start getting down to South Jersey,
Oh, it's
there's
diverse.
town,
It's
you get,
diverse.
yeah,
You can have the mountains in up in Phillipsburg. You get in the city of Bergen County. You got the beach like SoCal at the Jersey Shore. You get the
yeah,
farms. It's the Garden State. It's a very diverse geography and culture in New Jersey. We uh,
yeah,
we have a lot of pride in being from New Jersey.
yeah. Well, I love this podcast, fellas. I love how you guys are anchoring on something that's so important to all of us and is, you know, is just such a great character building thing for young men and women. And I'm so into this girls wrestling at this moment, so into it because it is so empowering, and so like they're so different than we are, guys. Like I would throw somebody into the scorer's table if I had the opportunity, right? Like, or double leg them as hard as I could into the stands and like not give two thoughts about it. And these girls are such sports women, they're sportsmen. They are encouraging and they hug each other and they say good job and they go talk to each other afterwards. And, there's nothing in and around the weight classes, because I think that's where, non-wrestling people would go is like, oh, you're making them make weight, or it's none of that. And I think girls wrestling is probably the future of our sport at this point. This is what reinvigorates this sport back to where, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing sport in America, and there's a lot of opportunities. We've talked to Coach Steiner at the Olympic Training Center. We've had Coach Mark Cody. They were the first Division I program to have female wrestling down at Presbyterian. We've also had Mike Moyer from the NWCA, and there's
Yeah.
over 150 plus 4-year institutions for females to take their wrestling to the next level. So it's yeah, it can only help the sport grow for everyone. So it's a great thing. Last
Yeah.
one we got, Jimmy. I know you're very strict. You've had a military life. Do you have any guilty pleasures?
I like my tequila.
Okay.
In fact, it'll probably be that it's 5:45 out here. When I get off with you, I'm going to go kiss my wife, and I'm going to pour tequila and soda with some lime juice.
Let's
Okay.
go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You have a favorite
Yeah.
brand?
I like Espolón Blanco. And I will tell you that my favorite sipping one is Jose Cuervo Family Reserve. And no one would think everyone hears Jose Cuervo and it's like, but I'm telling you, they make some really good tequila. And so that's more of my, celebrating something kind of thing. So that's the sipper, but the Espolón is a great mixer.
Okay. You get down with mezcal at all?
Oh, I love mezcal.
Okay.
I
All right.
love mezcal.
All
That
right.
stuff doesn't last long in this house, though.
Learned a lot today, Jimmy. We appreciate your conversation and sharing your time with us, and just chopping it up about wrestling, your what you got going on with GORUCK, and then just sharing your insights with what you've learned and accomplished with the military. And again, we thank you for all you've done for us. It's an honor and a pleasure to chat with you and reconnect. And we're looking forward to seeing GORUCK at the games and everything else coming in the future.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. And hey, if there's anything I can ever do for you guys, let me know. And offer that up to other coaches out there that are, changing kids' lives and being great examples for them. And, if it's in the form of product or a discount for product on things I've talked about, like just have them reach out to me, or you guys reach out to me. Like, let me know what I can do. I really, I really believe like you guys are at that tip of the spear
Thank
for,
you.
making great young Americans.
Thank you. And keep being Jersey on the sidelines.
Oh yeah, that's you can't do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.